Okay, thank you everybody who's participating. And I just want to mention a few things. As I said, we are recording this. If people have comments or if they want to ask questions, I would appreciate this being left towards the end of the program. And you also are able to put your comments or questions on the chat feature, and Oscar, my brother, will be monitoring this. Anyway, thank you everybody who is here, and of course some of us are not. We want to begin the proceedings by mentioning something that most of you are aware of. Since we met in July as a group, as mostly former Prometheans, we heard the sad news of Farida Majid passing away. And now, although Farida Majid was only with us for a short time in terms of the theatrical events, and she was not really a member of the Prometheans, but she was a very important person in the early years of our group, you know, so she participated in one of our early plays. All right, this is a collage that appeared in the Daily Star of October the 7th, and Kaisar Haq wrote a very fine tribute to Farida Majid. And this was quite an interesting article for me because I was aware that Farida had had quite an illustrious career as a poet and a scholar, but I hadn't really had an opportunity to meet her since I left Dhaka in 1969. So it was really nice to know that she had achieved so much in her life. And of course, over the last couple of years or so, I did have some contact with her over the internet. Okay. Now, I would like to read from Kaisar Haq's tribute to her from the Daily Star, October the 7th. And thank you, Kaisar, for giving me permission to read this and also for joining us. So this is what Kaisar wrote. I knew Farida by reputation before I met her in 1977, when her career as a London literary personality was at its peak. Poetry was her passion, and she spent most of her time with poets. They gathered to read out and talk poetry every Thursday evening in her Chelsea flat. She had launched the Salamander imprint with a 24-page pamphlet, Take Me Home Rickshaw, containing her translations of leading Bangladeshi poets, from Shamsur Rahman, an intimate friend, to his younger contemporaries. The proceeds from sales went to a school in Dhaka. The cover was designed by the famous Polish-born artist Felix Topolsky, whose friendship with Farida and her poetry circle deserves celebratory mention. I should add that the interesting sketch that you have here, the wonderful sketch of Farida, was done by Felix Topolsky. And also in this collage, you see Farida with the eminent American poet John Ashbery. Now, I would like to observe a moment of silence to remember Farida, and not only that, to remember all others who have passed on, and also to reflect on those who are not with us or who are dealing with the challenges of old age and ill health, okay? We wish Azra cannot join us because she's in Delhi having a procedure. We wish her well. I should add that one of the reasons why we are recording this is we will be able to share this with others. So if we can observe a moment of silence and pray in our hearts for all these people. Thank you. One of the reasons why we are here together is that we want to remember those that we have loved. And we want to remember some of the things that gave us joy and pleasure when we were in Dhaka in those days, that period of time. We're talking about the 1950s and 1960s, a long time ago. So this is a quote that we use in our book as an epigraph, and it's certainly one that resonates with a lot of us. All of us have lost loved ones, people in our family and friends and so on. And of course, we are at that age. We are all in the evening of our life, which is what Van Gogh said here in his letter to his brother Theo. He says, "And the memories of all we have loved stay and come back to us in the evening of our life. They are not dead, but sleep." And that's what we're doing here. We are gathering a treasure of memories. We're doing that. And that is what we did in our book, basically. So one of the reasons why we wrote the book was that we wanted to people not to forget those days. But I'm going to begin by asking my sister Niaz to tell us a little bit about what led her to the writing of this particular book, right? So, Niaz, can you?
Yes. Thank you, Raza. Thank you very much. In December 2018, there was an excellent production of J.B. Priestley's An Inspector Calls. The reviewer reviewing this book, the display in the Daily Star, mentioned that he had no idea about English language plays being performed before 1971. And I quote from his review, "There are hearsay evidences, but not substantiated, that in the then East Pakistan, there were at least two, or who knows, perhaps more groups, Dhaka Stage and Prometheans, that used to stage plays in English language in Dhaka." But no one could give him any information about these two groups. Now, Dhaka Stage did not perform plays in English. And sadly, this gentleman was not aware of this group, simply called the amateurs. So, I thought that there were a number of us who were active in English language theater in the late 50s and 60s. And if we did not document what we remembered, no one would. And these wonderful moments, days, years would be forgotten. So I asked my brother, who was a very active member of the Prometheans, if he would put down his thoughts and we could together write a book. And Raza very gladly agreed. But though this book is in our joint names, I must acknowledge the help of people whom we contacted via Facebook. Both Raza and I, we sent out the message that we needed information, we needed pictures, and we were overwhelmed by the generosity of people. So we got a lot of pictures, and of course, some pictures we got after the book was published. And I would like to acknowledge here the presence of Shirin Haq. She was Shirin Akbar in those days. And there's a picture which was put on Facebook by Rumi Ali, who was in the radio play with her. So thank you for being here, Shirin. Rumi is supposed to join, but that was the way in which we got quite a few pictures. So I want to acknowledge the contribution of our Facebook friends. So that is how this book was put together. And of course, Raza was in Canada, I was in Dhaka, But thanks to, the internet, we were able to communicate frequently.
Okay, it's somewhat coincidental, but I was thinking of writing something about the Prometheans at around the same time. I should add that my sister has been writing all her life. I think she grew up with a pen in her hand, and in one hand and a book in the other. But for me, I was always going to write. When I retire, when I have time, I will write. But this didn't happen, and even after I retired, I wasn't really doing much writing. And then when I did start writing, it was interesting that most of my writing, whether it was about my grandmother or about playing cricket, it all happened to be about things that happened prior to 1969 when I left Dhaka. And about the same time, I joined a Facebook group called Memories of Former East Pakistan. And Ghazala Akbar was a member of that group, and I acted with people in her family. And she suggested I write about the Prometheans. So it was something I was thinking about at the time, and that's what we did. Now, of course, my sister, being in Dhaka, was better able to do research on theater that was, that took place at the time, other than what I was involved in. So she mentioned the radio plays, and of course my sister and I were also quite involved in doing radio plays in English, and a lot of them were directed by Zillur Rahman Khan. Here is a picture from a rehearsal of a radio play. So again, I'm going to ask Niaz to tell us about the radio plays, about the amateurs, and about the thespians.
Thank you, Raza. Thank you. English plays were regularly broadcast once a week from 9 to 9:30 p.m. And initially these were directed by Professor F.C. Turner of Dhaka University. After Professor Turner left, Mr. Abdul Mateen, who taught at Jagannath College, and Mr. Sabir Raza Karim, they would direct radio plays. Sabir Raza Karim joined the civil service, and he was quite busy. So it fell upon Professor Mateen to direct these plays. And there were quite a few people, and I'd like to name them, who took part in the English language plays on radio. Husne Jahan, Razia Khan, Zillur Rahman Khan, Anisuzzaman Khan, Rashidul Hassan, Mizanur Rahman, Nilfar Ullah, Shamsud Dahar, Sultana Alam. And then these were, they graduated and they left, or they started working and they left, or they started acting on stage and they left. And then they were followed by a new group of people, among them Raza and myself. And then when we sort of graduated, we were followed by younger people like Shireen Akbar, who you see in this picture, Afrin Ahmad, Rubina Niaz, Rumi Ali, and Nizam Ahmad. And I'll go back a little bit. The popularity of the radio plays encouraged Professor Mateen. We always called him Professor Mateen. For some reason, college teachers are called professors. And at the university, it takes a long time for a teacher to become a professor. So Professor Mateen started, he wanted to launch a group which would perform on stage. And he simply called this group the Amateurs. And the Amateurs, I think there were some here. Yeah. The Amateurs were active from 1958 to 1962. And then, of course, many of them, they joined the civil service and they left. So these are some of the plays that they acted in. Julius Caesar, Professor Mateen himself was Julius Caesar. And this play, I remember seeing it. It was staged not in the British Council auditorium, but outside the British Council building. And then we had, of course, the act, Mizanur Rahman was there and the other members of the group were there. But there were also other plays that they acted, and you've got a list there. But two of their very popular plays, very famous plays, the picture that you see is of Mice and Men. It's a very powerful play, an American play by John Steinbeck. And Arsenic and Old Lace. Arsenic and Old Lace, of course, was a delightful play. And here you have, these actors. We couldn't identify all of them. Interestingly, in the picture, this is actually one picture, but it was so large that was broken up into two. We have Mahmoud Al-Amin put on there, who joined acting with the amateurs and then later on became a member of Prometheans. You have Shamsul Bari, you have Riaz Rahman. Now, the Mizanur Rahman there, Jalal Al-Karimi, the very handsome man, turned into a Boris Karloff duplicate. Junaid Iqbal and Anisul Zaman Khan, who actually gave me a lot of material on the amateurs. And next to him is Yusuf Chaudhry. The amateurs could not get any, Bengali women to act on stage. They were willing to act in the radio plays, but not on stage. So they got expatriates, American expatriates, to act in the plays. There are three ladies here, Pat Stalder, Joan Redmond, but we haven't been able to identify the woman in the picture on the right. So the amateurs died a natural death because Anisul Zaman Khan became CSP, Mizanur Rahman became busy with something, Riaz Rahman also became a CSP, and it died a natural death, and it was followed by another group. Okay. Thank you, Raza.
Yeah, thank you. Now, I was in Chittagong when the amateurs were active, so I didn't get to see any of their plays, but my sister did. And there was another group, and this was, of course, a group at Holy Cross College called the Thespians. And Niaz was very active with the Thespians and participated in quite a few plays. So I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit about the Thespians.
Thank you, Raza. Yes, Holy Cross had a very active cultural life, and almost from its inception, a play would be staged every year. And when I joined, Sister Carmen used to direct the plays. But when I joined the Holy Cross and I joined the Thespians just mean actors in Greek. When I joined the Thespians, Sister Francilia had taken over the Thespians. So the first play that I acted with the Thespians was 12th Night. And in those days, of course, it was an all-girls college, so tall and, what would I say, muscular girls would act the part of boys. Not always. We had Sir Andrew Aguchi was played by this very slim Evelyn Baptist. And Shireen Akbar, the tall Shireen Akbar, daughter of Justice Fazli Akbar, she played the part of Malvolio. Malvolio, as everyone knows, is a part which is given to one of the top actors in the group. So after 12th Night, I'm not going to read all the names, you can see the names. After 12th Night, Sister Joseph Mary took over from Sister Francilia, and she chose The Taming of the Shrew. Of course, today I would not have acted in The Taming of the Shrew, which is such a misogynistic play, such an anti-feminist play. But in those days, I didn't know better. And I was very happy to act the part of Petruchio, kicking people, beating people, shouting at people, treating everyone as badly as I could. But I enjoyed the part of Toby Belton. In fact, my father was at that time in Chittagong, and there was a play which was being staged by this American group, expatriate group, Come Back Little Shiva, in which there is the part of a woman who's always drunk. And I persuaded my father to take me to see the play because I needed to know how a drunkard moves about. So he was very sweet and he took me to see the play. So after two Shakespearean plays, the third play that that Sister chose, Sister Joseph Mary, was a Greek play. And apart from producing these plays, the sister really wanted to teach us what the plays were like. The sister had at one time not only taken courses in drama, but she was actively interested in theater. And there, many years later, after the sisters gave up their habits, she showed a picture of herself with Ronald Reagan at the time, a very handsome Hollywood actor. Anyway, so when we were doing the Elizabethan plays, the Shakespearean plays, we learned about the Shakespearean theater, we learned about the Elizabethan theater, the conventions of the Elizabethan theater. We also learned about how to throw a voice because we didn't use mics in those days. And then when we did Antigone, we learned about the Greek theater. And sister was very particular about costumes. So if Antigone, I was Creon, and we had some wonderful actors. Nowadays we don't use the word actresses. It was a very powerful play. And after Antigone, sister became very ambitious. I was in Holy Cross for 4 years. Most people were in Holy Cross for 2 years. Sister knew that she would never get a person like Niaz Ali to play the part of the most difficult Shakespearean character, King Lear. So she chose King Lear, a very, very difficult play. And here are some scenes from King Lear. There's the lovely Zebunissa as Cordelia being greeted by the King of France. And there's a picture of me as King Lear with Habiba Amin as one of the dukes. And behind you can see the Fool. The Fool play is a very important character in Lear. And one of the problems, of course, was that even though sister was very particular about the play, about the stage, taught me lots of things, we did not spend much money on makeup. And a tragic scene turned very funny because, there's this mad scene in the Heath, on the Heath, where King Lear is, mad, running around the stage, beating his head. And of course, I had to run around the stage like a mad person and beat my hair. And I beat my hair without remembering that I had powder in my hair. So instead of being greeted by, sounds of horror at this king gone mad, I was greeted by gales of laughter from the audience when they saw the powder rising from my head. But I think I did redeem myself at the end because even though I think Zebunissa was taller than me, she was very slim and very light. And at the end of the play, King Lear comes in with Cordelia in his arms. And I did come in with Cordelia in my arms.
So I just wondered, did you have a fitness test before they cast you to see if you could carry the weight of another person?
I don't, it was so dangerous if you think about it. If I had dropped her, and if I had dropped her and she had, hurt herself, I don't think sister thought about it. She just thought that I was strong enough. Zebun, she was very light. Unfortunately, I just had to bring her in and lay her down, and I managed to do that. I must have been 60, not 60 kgs, 60 pounds heavier than her.
Oh my goodness, okay.
Don't try to guess my weight.
We will move on to other plays done by the thespians. This was perhaps your last play, as far as I can recall, but you stayed on as a teacher, And also, of course, you certainly must have taken some part behind the scenes on other plays that the thespians did. So I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit about some of the other plays.
The thespians went on to do other plays. The Merchant of Venice, you can see this, on the left, there's a picture of Portia and Nerissa. Nerissa was played by Ismet Shirazi, who later joined the Prometheans. And on the right, there is old Gobo and his son, Lancelot Gobo, played by Shahana Rao. In the next scene, you have Graciano. I'm sorry, not Graciano. On the left, you have Lancelot Gobo whispering to Jessica to look out of the window because because Lorenzo will be there to abduct her. And on the right, you have Atiya Qasim. Atiya Qasim was not very tall. She was quite slim and quite, dainty looking. But she played a wonderful part as Shylock. It was a wonderful, wonderful performance. On the right, you have Bassanio pleading with Portia, who has the ring. And of course, Bassanio does not know at this point that he did indeed give the ring to a woman, the woman being Portia in disguise. So there was the Merchant of Venice, a wonderful performance by the thespians. And again, true to form, Sister chose a Greek play, Electra. She had twin sisters, and we all thought that she would give the role of Orestes to one twin and the role of Electra to the other twin. But surprisingly, she did not do so. The part of Orestes was played by Tazeen Murshid, who later on, she didn't join the Prometheans as such, but she did join the last play that was performed under the Prometheans banner, but most of the older Prometheans had left. And it would have been the beginning of a new generation of Prometheans led by Chinku. Chinku had, of course, acted in other plays by Prometheans. So on the left, you have Orestes, who comes disguised, and on the right, you have Electra, Ghazala Ali. In fact, she's passed away. One of the twins, she's Raza Asghar and my sister. So Electra, she was only 16. Ghazala was only 16 years old, but she did a wonderful job as Electra. And there is the picture of Ghazala as Electra. And the performance was so good that Raza, who saw it, was completely, for Raza and me, Durdana and Ghazala were always thought of as our kid sisters. But Raza, when Raza saw the play and saw the maturity with which Ghazala played the part, he was quite overwhelmed. And I would like to just read something from Curtain Call. One of the most memorable scenes of the play was that of Electra mourning the death of Orestes with the urn supposedly containing his ashes in her hands. It was difficult to believe that Ghazala was only 16 years old. Her brother Raza Ali, who was in the audience, was moved at his sister's acting. He remarked to Sister Joseph Mary that he realized for the first time that his little sister had grown up. Now, things, of course, changed subsequently. Um, and after 72, when the Holy Cross became a Bangla medium college, the plays that were performed were in Bangla. Thank you, Raza.
Thank you, buddy. Yes, actually, we were six brothers and sisters, and I think five of us acted in plays. My sister Farida was also not with us; was the one person who didn't. But everybody else, did something or other on stage. I'm now going to talk a little bit about the Prometheans. But actually, the first play, we could say that this was the first play of the Prometheans. But it was not done under the name of the Prometheans. It was actually put on by a group called the Students' Drama Society. And this is a group of people at Dhaka University. It included some of the teachers. Professor Sajjad Yusuf was the president. Vice president was Ijaz Rasul Tajwar, who was quite busy behind the scenes. And one person who was actually perhaps responsible for getting this off the ground was Shah Alam Chaudhry, who was the general secretary. Also, members of the executive included some of the people who went on to become members of the Prometheans, or if not, who at least acted in A Memory of Two Mondays. So my sister Niaz, Farida Majid, whom we've mentioned before, Siddiqur Zaman, my brother-in-law, has also passed away, and M.A. Qayyum, they acted in A Memory of Two Mondays, and Shama Sheikh was also a member of the council, and she acted with the Prometheans later on. A Memory of Two Mondays is a play by Arthur Miller. It is a sort of autobiographical play, and it is set in an automotive parts warehouse. The character that I play, Bert, is the outsider. He actually is, you might say, a representative of Arthur Miller himself. Okay, and he's there. He's only there temporarily. He's a dreamer, a bookish type, and of course, for him, this is just a temporary job, whereas the others are stuck in this dead-end job. In this picture, you see some of the members of the cast. There's my sister on the left, and from left to right, next to her is Shamim Zaman. Then we have Tobi Obaidullah, Sirajul Majid Mamoon, and next to me is Siddiq Bhai, my brother-in-law. Sirajul Majid Mamoon has also passed away. This was the only play that he did with us, and unfortunately, he was quite an asset and would have been, but I believe his parents didn't want him to spend his time, doing frivolous things like acting on stage when he could be studying. He went on to quite an illustrious career, I understand, as a radio personality with a distinctive voice. Here is another photograph from A Memory of Two Mondays. And we see people reacting to the appearance of mice on the premises. And you see Imtiaz Hussain, who played the very important role of Gus, which is kind of a foreshadowing some of the great tragic heroes of Arthur Miller's later plays. And he is quite distraught, and Shamim Zaman is restraining him there. And Farida Majid is the person who's had to jump onto the counter to escape the mice. Okay? I'm going to, and I had planned to do this actually even before we heard the sad news about Farida. I had intended to recognize some of the important people who participated in theatre in those days. And Farida was one of the people I wanted to talk about. So I wanted to read a couple of little things about her from our book. So the first little excerpt from the chapter on A Memory of Two Mondays is what I will read. In choosing plays during those early years, an important consideration was the number of females in the cast. At the time, there were not more than a few young ladies whose families would countenance their hobnobbing with strange young men on the stage. We happen to have two young ladies whose families were enlightened enough to allow this, Niaz Ali, later Zaman, and Farida Majid. A Memory of Two Mondays with two females in the cast, thus was a play the group could do. Niaz played the part of Agnes, described as a spinster in her 40s. Farida was Patricia, who is in her 20s, a flirtatious and somewhat giddy young lady. Patricia is no doubt intended to provide some comic relief, and she spends much of her time fixing her clothing and going to the one bathroom on the premises. In one memorable scene, she has to get up on the furniture to avoid mice that suddenly appear on the scene. A little excerpt from another chapter in the book. Farida Majid came from a family with a strong literary and cultural background, and they were more liberal in their thinking than most. Farida's sister, Fahmida, whose familiar name was Monju, was an accomplished dancer. Farida herself was a free spirit who went on to distinguish herself as a scholar and poet. Farida's family was one of the few who welcomed male friends of their daughters into their home. Admirers of Farida and Fahmida included members of the Prometheans, who often called on the young ladies at their home and were treated as honorable guests of the family. Around the time that the Prometheans produced A Memory of Two Mondays, Farida also caught the attention of a young American by the name of Robert Bowie. Bob had recently received his Bachelor of Architecture degree from Pratt University in Brooklyn, New York. He went on to become an award-winning architect with an international reputation. Some of his accomplishments include work he did in Dhaka in the 1960s, notably his involvement in the design of the Kamalapur railway station. It was not long after Farida and Bob met that they fell in love, and in December 1962 they were married. And so this meant that Farida was not available for our next play, which actually happened to be in December 1962. And this was the first play done under the name of the Prometheans, and the play was The Rainmaker by Richard Nash. Members of the Now, I should mention, I omitted mentioning this, but the play, A Memory of Two Mondays, was directed by Professor Mateen, and we were very fortunate that Professor Mateen offered to help us out by directing the first play that we did, and he directed a couple of other plays after that. The members of the cast included Imtiaz Hussain as the father figure, as the head of the family, the Curry family, and others were Pujan Amin, and my sister mentioned Pujan or Mahmoud Al Amin, who used to be with the amateurs, and we were very fortunate to have him join our group. Lizzie, my sister Niaz, and I were also part of the family. Other members of the cast included the sheriff, who was played by Atikur Rahman, one of the famous Rahman twins, brother of Mizanur Rahman, and my brother-in-law Siddiqur Zaman, who played the part of File. And of course, the leading role was the role of Bill Starbuck, or the Rainmaker, and that was played by none other than Haider Saeed Obaidullah. And there's a picture of Toby, as we called him, you know, as he was popularly known. And I will mention that The Rainmaker was a good choice, because there seemed to be roles for the few people that were available to act at the time, and Professor Mateen had a great knack for finding the right role for the right person. And I will, there's a lot I could say about this wonderful play, but I will just read something about Toby that was written, okay, in this chapter. The key role of the Rainmaker, who goes by the name Bill Starbuck, was played by Haider Saeed Obaidullah, known as Toby to his family and friends. Toby was ideal for the part of Starbuck, described by Nash as a big man, lithe, agile, a loud braggart, a gentle dreamer. That description provides an important clue to the paradoxical way in which Nash saw the main character of the play. Nash stressed the importance of viewing the play as a romance, and because it is a romance, we do not dismiss Starbuck as simply a liar and a fraud. Starbuck appears on the scene offering to bring rain in return for a payment of $100. While his offer might be seen as preposterous enough, it is the ridiculous and extravagant hyperbole that he spouts that establishes him as a con man, but also makes him a larger-than-life figure, a man of imagination and romance. Wearing a cowboy hat and boots and a red bandana around his neck, Toby cut a fine figure on the stage. He fit the physical description of Starbuck as a big man who was lithe and agile. Tall and good-looking, Toby stirred the hearts of many young ladies. In Bengal Rag, a somewhat fictionalized memoir written by Durdana Sumro and Ghazala Hamid, our younger sisters, there is this description of Toby, who is renamed Tony. Tony was the current heartthrob of the three girls. He had played the part of Bill Starbuck, the rainmaker, with rare panache. Things came easy to him. The girls had seen him playing cricket, a dream in white flannels. His languid run-up as he spun the ball to perfection kept them mesmerized. Tall, fair, and handsome, with light-colored hair that he was always flicking off his forehead, he was a born entertainer. The stories he told them, each one more amazing than the other, and just this side of believable. The above description of Toby suggests that it was not simply a matter of his looking the part. He had qualities that made him an appropriate choice to play the role of the charming con man, one who is described as both a loud braggart and a gentle dreamer. Now, my sister played the part of Lizzie, and Lizzie is the unmarried girl that the mean brother, played by Pouton, always said would remain a spinster for the rest of his life. But as it happens, there are two people interested in her, one of them being Bill Starbuck, and the other being this very quiet, not very he also is a dreamer, but he's a man with little dreams. And Liz Curry has to make a choice between Bill Starbuck and File, and then she, of course, ends up choosing the man with the small dreams. Now, eventually, she did go on to marry Siddiq Usman, who played the part of File. I don't know if at this time she knew that this would happen. We didn't at that point, certainly. But you might say that parents were perhaps justified in not wanting their daughters to participate in theater because, who knows what might happen. But then, on the other hand, some of them did happen to find very nice men and partners, and certainly Siddiq Bhai was a wonderful person. It's 20 years now since he passed away, but he was a wonderful brother-in-law, and I have to say that my three brother-in-laws have all been wonderful people. So we will now move on, and I think we're going to talk about things other than the Prometheans for a bit. We're going to talk about something that happened in the year 1964. And what happened in 1964 was the Shakespeare Catacentenary, the 400th anniversary of Shakespeare's birth. And this was celebrated in a number of ways, by academic institutions and by places like the British Council. So I am going to ask my sister once again to tell us a little bit about her participation in the activities connected with the Shakespeare Catacentenary.
Thank you, Raza. I mentioned that the British Council was the scene of Julius Caesar, but the British Council was also the auditorium where the thespians staged their plays. However, the British Council didn't serve just as an auditorium where plays were staged. The directors and the assistant directors of the British Council also became involved with student theatre groups. And one of them was David Bradley, who joined the British Council as assistant director in 1963. And somehow he came to learn about our group, and he did a play reading of Othello, which was acted in by Raza, myself. Raza was Othello, I was Desdemona, Nargis, and Mahmoud Al-Amin put on as Iago. In 1964, David Bradley became a little more ambitious, and he decided to stage The Winter's Tale. Now, The Winter's Tale is like a happy version of Othello. So the first part of The Winter's Tale is about a jealous husband and what he does to his wife. In Othello, of course, Desdemona is killed. But in The Winter's Tale, Hermione is believed to die because of the cruelty of her husband, who punishes her because he thinks that she is having an affair with his friend, another king. But The Winter's Tale, as I said, it's one of Shakespeare's last plays, and the ending is romantic, is happy. In fact, it's also called a romance. And the second part of the play takes place in the country which belongs to Polixenes. However, it does not take place in the court. It takes place, it begins with the shepherds, and there's a sheep shearing, there are festivities, and we are introduced to Perdita, who is actually the daughter of Leontes, played by Mahmoud Al-Amin, played brilliantly by Mahmoud Al-Amin. And Perdita, she is very beautiful, and she catches the eye of the son of Polixenes, Florizel. And Polixenes, the king, hears about this, and he comes to see for himself and finds out that it is true. His son is hobnobbing with this completely unsuitable girl. And there are lots of things happening at the same time. The sheep shearing is a time of festivity. Peddlers try to sell their goods. And the peddler was played by, Autolycus was played by Miran Ahmad, the brother of Shah Rukh. Unfortunately, he is also someone whom we have lost. He played the part of Autolycus brilliantly. The peddler who not only sells cheap goods, tawdry goods at an exorbitant price, but who also manages to pinch the purses of the shepherds and shepherdesses who throng around him to buy his stuff. But Autolycus does prove to be the catalyst. Somehow he persuades Florizel to take Perdita and run away to this other country, to Sicilia, and Polixenes learns about this and he follows them, and everything, of course, ends very, very happily. And this was the one play, I think, of Shakespeare's where Shakespeare did not, tell the audience a secret. The secret being that Hermione, the queen, was not dead. But so when, the statue of Hermione is, unveiled and Hermione comes to life, I think the audience, the Dhaka audience, was as surprised as the Elizabethan audience must have been in Shakespeare's time. So that was, of course, what we did with David Bradley, but there were other activities that were going on. And I think Raza will fill you in on that.
Actually, I was going to ask my brother to read a short.
Sorry. Yes, of course. Of course.
Okay. Over to you, Asghar, if you're ready. All right. So little
yeah. So I will read a few lines from Shakespeare's The Winter's Tale. which was performed by the Prometheans in 1964. I played the role of Prince Florizel. The lines are from Act 4, Scene 4. The scene takes place before the shepherd's sheep shearing festival. The prince and Perdita are in love. Perdita has been brought up by a shepherd as his daughter since a baby. And everyone has been unaware that she is the daughter of a king. The part of Perdita was played by the late Nilüfer Chaudhary. The prince speaks endearingly to his love. What you do still betters what is done. When you speak, sweet, I'd have you do it ever. When you sing, I'd have you buy and sell so. So give alms, pray so. And for the ordering your affairs, to sing them too. When you do dance, I wish you a wave of the sea, that you might ever do nothing but that. Move still, still so, and own no other function. Each you're doing, so singular in each particular, crowns what you're doing in the present deeds, that all your acts are queens. Back to you, Raza.
Thank you, Asghar.
Can I say something here?
Go ahead.
Which Asghar shared with us sometime back. You know, this was the first time that you acted, right, Asghar?
Right, Baji.
Nilüfer was a very lovely young woman, but Asghar had no chance of any romance because he was told that there was another young man who was interested in Nilüfer, and he had better keep his eyes and his hands to himself. And of course, she did marry him afterwards.
Yeah, she did warn me, stay away.
Okay, I'm going to talk very briefly about my involvement with the Carter Centenary celebrations. Yes, I was, of course, in the play reading of Othello that David Bradley directed, and Pouton was a very evil Iago in that play. But also, and this is one of the reasons why I wasn't in the Winter's Tale, it's not because I was getting ready for my BA Honours exam. I think I was too busy in those days playing cricket and acting and things of that sort. But I was in a production of Macbeth that was being put on by the English department of the University of Dhaka. And my role was a big role, the role of Macbeth. And in that production, Shireen Haseeb was Lady Macbeth. Unfortunately, that play never got off the ground. I think Macbeth always has this history of bad luck that goes along with that particular play. That's why it's sometimes never named. If you're in the green room in the theatre, acting in the play, you don't use the word Macbeth, you say the Scottish play to avert the evil eye. Anyway, we did some scenes from various plays, Shakespeare plays, at the British Council, and the scene that I did, and in this case, Lady Macbeth was played by Shama Sheikh. She played the part. And this is a wonderful scene, Act 1, Scene 7, where she persuades him to go ahead with the killing of Duncan. He's reluctant to do this because he says that Duncan, that he is a kinsman and a subject and also a host, and he should, not bear the knife myself, but shut the door against the murderer. But she, of course, is able to work on all his weak points. She says, "You don't love me." She suggests that he's a coward. "Art thou a man? Art thou afeard?" And eventually she persuades him so that he goes ahead and kills his king. Now, in memory of that experience, which was one of the most amazing experiences that I had, even though we never managed to stage the play, I am going to recite a soliloquy from Macbeth. Okay, so I will take my glasses off because, of course, you couldn't do Macbeth wearing glasses, right? And it's curious because I was in the play with Iqbal Idris, who was Macduff, and we had this sword fighting scene. And of course, I was very short-sighted. It was very difficult. That was the thing that really scared me the most. I mean, how am I going to get through this particular scene? Anyway, here we are. This is the speech, and I'll tell you a little bit about the speech after. Tomorrow, and tomorrow, and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace to the last syllable of recorded time, and all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Out, out, brief candle, life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. So one of the many speeches in Shakespeare where the world is a stage. And of course, this doesn't represent Shakespeare's philosophy of life. It's very nihilistic, very pessimistic. But remember that Macbeth has really damned himself. And this speech comes at a time when he's at a real low point, and it comes right after he finds out that Lady Macbeth is dead. So his attendant, Seton, comes and says, informs him that his wife has died, and he says, she should have died hereafter. There would have been time for such a word. But there is no hereafter for him except the hell of damnation, and he knows that. Shakespeare was amazing, and of course, I went on to spend quite a bit of time studying Shakespeare. And Shakespeare was important in the curriculum in those days, certainly at the university level and even in the schools. And two of the schools that I attended, St. Placid's and St. Gregory's, they did Shakespeare plays there. And of course, we mentioned the fact that, Holy Cross did Shakespeare plays. At the university, they did try to put on this play, but there's a record of other plays having been done, Julius Caesar, Merchant of Venice, and so on. And in the schools that I attended, St. Placid's and St. Gregory's, in fact, did Macbeth at some point. And St. Placid's, the students of St. Placid's did Hamlet, and they also did Julius Caesar, I believe. And the play was very well received. And in fact, I think Hamlet also came to Dhaka. So that's a lot about Shakespeare and the celebrations at the time in 1964. 1964 was also a year in which we did another play, and this is what we're going to end with today. We're going to end with this particular play, which okay, I'm going to we don't have a lot of photographs from this play, but we do have actually I have somewhere a copy of the program. And the play was Harvey, also directed by Professor Matheen. And one of the things that I should mention about Harvey, and that's quite important, is that we now have a lot of new people coming on board. And this was wonderful because, for one reason or another, there was a lot of turnover. People acted in one play and then they moved on. Some got married, some, like Toby Bedla, got a job somewhere else. Farida Majid got married. Others, had other reasons. Maybe in the case of my sister, who later on stopped acting because she's now was a mother, so it became very difficult to also perform in plays. The significant thing about Harvey, though, is that a number of families now became involved. So you see the Sheikh family, and in this play, Yasmin Sheikh, and on the signed part of the cover, you can see signatures of some of the people who were involved. Yasmin Sheikh was in it, and her brother Shahid was in it as well. The Shirazi family also became involved. Ismat was in Harvey. She was in some of the later plays, she was in importance. And her brother Moeen had a big part in a play as well. And then I should also mention Shah Rukh and Miran. I think this was Shah Rukh's only play, but Miran acted in 3 of our plays. Miran acted in this one, and in Winter's Tale, and also, I believe, in Importance of Being Earnest. Asghar actually acted in this, and he acted in 4 of our plays. Okay, I should also mention one of the important things about Harvey is that now a lot more women were allowed to participate. So apart from Ismat and Yasmin, people I've already mentioned, and Shah Rukh, we also had Qamar Sultana and Khurshid Nazir in the cast. But the most important person in this play was the main character. And the main character is not Harvey, as most of you will know, because Harvey actually did not exist. Harvey was this imaginary rabbit that apparently accompanied the main character all over. The main character was played by none other than Bhutan Amin. And the character's name was Elwood Dowd. So I'm going to just read briefly about Bhutan, about Mahmood al-Amin. Unfortunately, he doesn't seem to be with us today, but we had invited him, so I hope I'm able to share a recording of this with him and with some of the others who have not been able to attend. So this is what we wrote about Bhutan. Mahmood al-Amin, popularly known as Bhutan, began his acting career with small roles in plays produced by the amateurs. He was Masala in Julius Caesar and a policeman in Arsenic and Old Lace. The Prometheans were fortunate to acquire the services of this gifted and versatile actor, and it was in their production of The Rainmaker that Bhutan had his first significant role. As the mean older brother, Noah Curry, Bhutan gave a performance that truly stood out. There was a malevolent streak in Bhutan's Noah that was especially evident in scenes of conflict with his brother Jim. Noah may be seen as something of a villain in the play, and Bhutan's performance certainly showed that the role of villain would be one that he would excel at. In 1964, the Catacentenary celebration of Shakespeare's birth, Bhutan did get an opportunity to play one of the great stage villains, Iago. This was not a fully staged play, but rather a dramatized play reading of key scenes from Othello. David Bradley of the British Council directed the play, and the cast included Raza Ali as Othello and Niaz Ali as Desdemona. Bhutan was in his element as Iago, reveling in his brilliant wit and in the skill with which he manipulates and torments Othello. Not long after, he played the part of the jealous tyrant Leontes in A Winter's Tale, also under David Bradley's direction. According to Bhutan, he was cast in the role because David thought his eyes were evil and he looked menacing. While Bhutan could very easily have been typecast as a villainous character, he showed the extent of his versatility by taking on the role of the lovable and gentle Elwood P. Dowd in the play Harvey by Mary Chase. Elwood is a friendly soul who loves meeting people and socializing in bars. He hands out his calling card freely and invites complete strangers to dinner or to have a drink with him at one of the many bars that he frequents. When a stranger who is selling magazines calls on the phone, he invites her to a tea and reception that is being hosted by his sister, Vita Louise Simmons, played brilliantly by newcomer Yasmin Sheikh. Vita and her daughter Myrtle May, played by Khurshid Nazir, have a far more serious concern. Elwood has a constant companion, a large rabbit that is only visible to him. And of course, much of the play involves his family trying to get him into some kind of place for psychiatric treatment, but unfortunately the wrong people get incarcerated in the psychiatric ward. I'm just going to read one very short comment that Putar wrote in an email. My next big role was that of Elwood Dowd in Harvey, written by Mary Chase. This role took a lot of imagination. It was very difficult for me to remember that Harvey was 6 foot tall, and all conversation I had with him, I had to remind myself to look up at him. For that reason, we had to put chalk marks on the stage wing at 6 feet level for me to focus on when I was at Harvey. When I was at home, or even when I was traveling on the rickshaw, I would practice my lines standing up. The rickshaw puller must have thought I was loony, talking to the Almighty, as I was always looking up when mumbling my lines. It was the most challenging role for me, having to converse and joke with an invisible friend on an empty stage. So we end with December 1964, when this play took place, and we hope that we will talk about some of the other plays at a later date. And I am yes, so I'm not quite sure when that will be, but also what I would like to do is recognize some other people who were involved with the Prometheans, and certainly recognize some of our directors. And two of the directors that we would like to recognize and will at a later meeting will be Sister Joseph Mary, who directed several plays with the Thespians, and finally Professor Abdul Mateen, who also is very active, not just with the Prometheans, but did a lot of acting himself in his time. So we'll recognize some of them. And other than that, I don't know if there are people who would like to comment, or if there are any people who would like to ask some questions. After I stop the recording, I will keep the meeting live for a bit, just in case people want to talk informally and share some thoughts and say hello.
Shireen, why don't you say something? Shireen, I'm so glad that you're here, Shireen. Do you want to talk? You didn't act on stage, but you did act in the radio plays. Do you want to say a few words?
No, I just wanted to, well, ask a related question. I'm glad and I'm very happy that you and Raza Ali, who was also my sister's class friend, Salma, that you put this history together, because if this hadn't been done, no one would have known how active we were those days, both on stage, radio, etc., culturally active, and with the English plays. Those were days when we could just, we enjoyed ourselves, we gave a lot of ourselves to these plays, and we were very serious about these things. But Niazapa and those of you who are associated, I noticed that Kaisar Haq is also here. Do you have the same kind of activities on in the Dhaka University English department, or in Dhaka University these days, in terms of English plays and all this? I mean, is there any that thing closed with us? I mean, I get sometimes a feeling that that thing perhaps has closed with us, the kind of amateur spontaneity that we showed on stage, over radio, etc.
Well, I don't remember the last time Dhaka University, the English department of Dhaka University produced an English language play, but I do remember that at least one play a year was the norm. You know, every year we would have a sort of a cultural event to welcome new students. So after You see, at Dhaka University in 1969, when I went up as a fresher, we produced Dr. Faustus. Azin Murshid was in it. Chinku was Dr. Faustus. I played a very minor role as chorus. And then that was produced, put on at the TSC and subsequently on Dhaka television. And just after that, this was again Chinku's doing independently. He organized, his friends, and we did Waiting for Godot, because this is just after Beckett won the Nobel Prize in 1969. So in 1970, we put on Waiting for Godot at the British Council. And subsequently, he also put on Endgame at the Intercontinental. And we had two Italian Commedia dell'arte plays as a sort of a package, also at the British Council. As for the English department, there were productions. I remember that just after I joined and before I left to do my PhD, the students put on a play by Tennessee Williams based on D.H. Lawrence's life, and a comedy, I forget which one, a short comedy. Then there would be at least snatches of plays, I remember, at the British Council. So this sort of thing was quite common. I actually adapted a short story by R.K. Narayan into a bilingual play, A Horse and Two Goats, which was produced at the TSC by the English department students. So, we did have this sort of thing almost once a year, but I don't know if that tradition still continues. Niyazapa, I don't think.
Oh, I'll tell you what, Kesar, you forgot the one of the finest plays that was staged by the English department. That was, when we had the Ibsen centenary, Tahmina did a wonderful job of directing A Doll's House. It was a wonderful, wonderful performance. But we had some excellent actors, and Tahmina was a very good director. But you know what happened, Kesar? I think you've forgotten. You should have remembered. Your memory should be sharper than me. Remember that the students were protesting something in the department. The department was trying to have evening classes, if you remember.
Yes.
And something that the department was very against, that the students should have protested, publicly. And I think what the department decided was that if the students do not apologize for the role that they played in these protests, then they would not be encouraged to act in the plays. So the English department drama society has not been active all these years.
Then I see. I missed the production of A Doll's House. I might have been.
It was so good. It was so good. And I'll tell you here that Tahmina, I'm mentioning Tahmina, and I give credit to her. Tahmina was married to Sayyid Jamil Ahmad.
Jamil, yes.
And Jamil is a wonderful producer, he's a wonderful director. And Tahmina, on a much, quieter level, because Jamil was in the theater department. Because before, we did not have a department of theater, but then the department of theater was started, and Jamil was one of the first people in that department. Now the department has divided into three. There's a department of performing arts, the department of theater, music, and dance, dance also. And Jamil is an excellent director, and when he does these, because he was in the theater department, he had this the department behind him.
Right.
So it's connected, and the students in the theater department have to perform plays. So Shireen, to answer your question, if you want to see excellent plays, well, not COVID times, but after COVID is over, if you just keep your ears open about what the theater department is doing in Dhaka University, you will find that the students are putting up these performances as part of their work. And of course, in Jahangirnagar University, but
Jahangirnagar does it, yes.
But Dhaka University also has a very active theater department. And I've seen they did a wonderful production of Macbeth a couple of years ago, when Shakespeare had his 450th anniversary. They had a wonderful production of Macbeth. Really,
the quarter centenary of his death, I think.
Of his death, sorry, yes, I'm sorry. It was a wonderful performance of Macbeth, staged in the Nat Mondol.
Nat Mondol. Every year, actually.
Every year, yes.
The hula, yeah. When did this? When I remember the student movement, was it at the start of this century?
It was. You remember? I forget the years. Maybe I was not even there at that time, because I must have been, superwoman. I was not that involved. But most of the other departments, they were having these evening classes. For example, the Faculty of Business Studies, they have these evening classes. And the English department also wanted to have that. But the students protested. And dating from that protest, the English department, but except, they did do these small performances when they have some programs, but not the full-fledged plays that they.
I remember Tahmina actually directing a part of A Midsummer Night's Dream at the British Council. So at every fresher's reception, there would be a dramatic performance. Perhaps not an entire play, but a scene or two or an act or something like that.
We're still recording, so I just want to, this discussion to carry on, but I will stop recording and we'll end the formal part of our meeting. But before I forget, I want to thank, of course, Niaz for participating and all the support I got from my brother Asghar and from my friend Abu Zafar. Abu Zafar, thank you very much. And especially for teaching me the trick with page down, page up. That was very good. Thank you. So I'm going to stop.
Before you end, I think one point needs to be made. Niaz mentioned it earlier, which was that the playwrights were quite active also around 70, 71 and so on. They performed Streetcar Named Desire and I think one other. Nasim Mohsin was very active in it.
I think they did.
We had Rana Mahmood.
The Henry Miller. Sorry, Arthur Miller,
Yes.
The Death of a Salesman, I think it was.
Death of a Salesman, yes.
I think part of the problem was that I left Dhaka in 1969, and I think the playwrights were active towards the end of that decade. So I didn't know very much about their productions, but certainly it was brought to our attention, and it's it's an omission in our book. I have to say that there are lots of things that we did omit in our book, but at the same time, I'm amazed at how much other people remembered, because there were so many gaps in our memory. There were certain plays where we had no idea of what had gone on and who was in it, and luckily a lot of people contributed and made it possible for us to fill in a lot of those blanks. And even to this day, even this event, people helped us with identifying the actors in plays like Merchant of Venice. We didn't quite know who one of the people was, but anyway, it's been quite a journey. Okay, so I am going to now we keep the meeting going for those of you who like to discuss things, and I do have a question or two as well, so I'm going to stop the recording now. Yes.